welcome to HouseTalk。很久没有在做这个 YouTube， 那我今天很荣幸邀请了一位很特别的嘉宾。It's my pleasure to have Jamie. Jamie, can you introduce yourself? Why you are here?
Hello everyone, my name's Jamie. I've been living in Taiwan for almost, coming up on January will be 10 years, and 13 years living in East Asia, so I've been here for a while. I met Ariston because he was one of my English students in a class I recently held with my dear teacher.
Jamie 是一个很棒的英文老师，那我们这次5堂课是有关于这个shareholder 的信件，股东信函的信件。那 Jamie 帮助我们学生帮助了很多。那当然他的身份也很特别，所以这也是为什么我会特别邀请 Jamie 来做这一次的访谈啊。So I have prepared some question for you. I'll just start the question. The first one: What is the turning point in your life that gave you philosophy of life?
Wow, philosophy of life. That's a pretty deep question. So. Right now I'm 34, so I guess the first question is I think I'm always working at it. I don't think I have like a set in stone concrete philosophy of life. I'm always trying to figure that out. So I guess maybe you won't be happy with my answer, but I would say I'm always working at it. I'm always trying to figure that out.
Because you're still young.
Still young, I still have time. All I would say is, I'll put it this way. If I'm thinking the same way when I'm 50 or 60 as I do now, then I'll be disappointed. I hope I'll learn and grow up when it gets to that point.
I said that. The second one, what's your advantages of becoming Terry's secretary? Do you have any suggestion or advice for job applicants? What skills do they need to be improved other than English?
Okay, so I'm not sure if the listeners are familiar with my background. So I had the privilege to work with Guo Taiming for 2 years as his 英文秘书 from 2016 to 2018, and I think it was definitely one of the most challenging experiences of my life, but I learned a ton, and it definitely was a life-changing experience. So yeah, I mean, to working with someone like him, I think the first thing I had zero experience going into that job, so I kind of had to learn on the fly, and I had to learn a bunch of different things. I would say, first things first, if you're a foreigner who wanted a job with, like, let's say a high-level Taiwanese or Chinese business individual like that, then without a doubt your Chinese needs to be at a solid level. Those guys they care a lot about their time, and they don't have the time or energy to deal with someone who's speaking lousy Chinese. So Chinese is definitely really important. That's just to get your foot into the door. And then after that, I would say you need to have high level of resilience. You need to be able to handle pressure. You need to be able to handle, unfortunately when you work with high level individuals like that, sometimes they have a lot of pressure, they have to deal with a lot of stress, and if you're their staff, that work closely with them, then you have to kind of deal with that, and that can be challenging and unpleasant sometimes. So you have to be able to compartmentalize and deal with stress and be able to stay calm under fire. So I think resilience is really important, patience, having a clear goal and objective. That's what got me through those 2 years working with him, was I was very clear what I wanted to get out of the experience. So I would say start with that.
And the next one, what is the common problem in learning English faced by Taiwanese students?
Vocabulary. I think it's actually pretty simple. Like my feeling, and this is something, so I teach English and I also teach some Chinese, and regardless of what the language focus is, usually I'll ask people, like, go home and memorize 500, 1,000 words and come back to me and tell me that your language skills hasn't improved somewhat. I strongly believe that the most important metric you should follow when you're learning a language is, like, how much words are you learning? Because if you're feeling like you're stuck, learn 1,000 words and you'll get unstuck. So that's the first thing. It's like, do you have some type of habit or routine that you can use to improve your language, and in particular your vocabulary? Because your vocabulary is tied to your listening, like how much you can understand. It's also tied to, like, what you can express and say. So as long as that number is going up slowly or gradually, then everything else will, what they say, in English we say a rising tide lifts all boats. So it'll improve everything else, all the other components of your language skills.
刚刚那中文应该叫做船涨水涨船高，对，或者水到渠成啊。那其实我觉得台湾的学生应该很多都会蛮注重这个单字的背诵，可是还是有很大的问题，就是单字的背诵，其实到后来学生们没有办法去运用，可能背完就会忘记。
Yeah, so Ariston brings up an important point, which is, yes, I should clarify. I'm not just saying like, and when I'm on the metro, I'll see a bunch of, high school, middle, just, looking at their word list. That's not the way to go about it because you don't have context. So it's really important, even for me when I'm working on my Chinese to this day, like I very rarely will ever just take a word by itself. I always try to find some 造句, 一些例句, and actually see how it's used in the wild. And then you have a much better chance of understanding how it's used and how to correctly use it. And it actually makes it stickier. It actually makes the word stickier because there's a context to it.
所以刚刚 Jamie 有讲到说，不只是单独去记诵单字之外，你还要利用实际的句子，让这个单字能够更融入在你的生活当中。And next one, number 5. What are pros and cons of living in Taiwan?
Oh, this is such a loaded question. Look, I'll put it this: my diplomatic response is as someone who's lived, I've lived in China, I've lived in Taiwan. I think that for me the most important thing is that I always remind myself is that yes, I live here and this is my adopted home, but it's also I always like to think I'm a guest. I'm a guest here, so I need to be understanding and learn and understanding of the customs and the culture and the way things are done here. And yes, sometimes, and I imagine Taiwanese when they go to the US or they go somewhere else, they'll also feel like, why do they do it that way? Or that's annoying. Like, why can't they just do it like back home? I think anyone will feel that way. So yeah, maybe I have like the 1 or 2 or 3 things that I might complain about. But for the most part, the way I tell people is I live in Taiwan because I really like Taiwan, not because I don't like my home country, the US. So that's the way I like to think of it.
希望这不是官方说辞。Alright. And what are your future plans in life? Have you ever thought about going back to Foxconn?
The short answer is no, but it's not what you think. It's more because, yes, as I mentioned, that was an amazing experience. It was a challenging experience, but I think what made it so life-changing for me was it gave me a lot of clarity on what I wanted going forward. So I was very clear. I'm like, okay, I think technology, I think manufacturing is not what I want to do with my career going forward. And up to that point, I had always felt interested in education in some way. What style, what format of education, I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling deep down in my gut that I wanted to pivot in that direction. So the first thing I did right out of Foxconn was I started getting my master's at Shida, NTNU. So I'm just finishing up my master's right now, and I have a full-time job. I'm working at a startup experimental school down in Taichung. But I would say I'm seeing where that takes me, but I think I have a lot of different interests, so I would kind of describe myself as a /斜杠. So I like to do a bunch of different things.
Sounds great. Pivot 就是我们在课堂上面常常有学到的，就是在一个就有点像是 turning point，当有一个转弯处，你要做一个很大的一个选择。那 Jamie 选择了是 education 教育。好 ，the next one, can you give any suggestion for people who want to experience their life in different cultures? At last, any words you would like to share with our audience?
One of my favorite, there's an expression in Chinese that I just love, which is a 井底之蛙, which is, I think the biggest thing is get out of the well, get out of the 井底. Like, so I think the big thing is having that, global mindset, or just a mindset that you're willing to step outside of your own cultural understanding, your own cultural frame, and understand why people do certain things, why they think a certain way. Just number one, be open-minded. Just be willing, like not judgmental. Show empathy and just try to understand, what are the different reasons that people do these things. Be curious, and be willing to adapt. And I would say for me, I came to Asia when I was 22. So right out of college, I was young. Looking for adventure, so I flew halfway around the world. So I think a big part is get yourself outside of your comfort zone And I think all the different opportunities, all the different things I've been able to do have all because I've been willing to step outside of my comfort zone, 吃苦 and try sometimes do some things that other people wouldn't be willing to do, and I think that's opened a lot of doors for me. So I would just say take the risk, be adventurous, and try. If the worst comes to worst, you can always come back.
Sounds great. 刚刚 Jamie 有谈到说他是只有讲到说进入 Foxconn 是要透过耐力，但是在这些竞争的过程，可能我们的学生或者是观众有一些很优秀的，那他们也想要进入这样子的职场，那要需要做怎么样的准备 ？How to prepare for if someone wants to get into the Foxconn?
Yeah, I mean, I would say whether it's Foxconn or Google or any other type of big multinational company. For example, if you're in college right now or university, and if you're a senior right now, and you're asking that question, I would say you've already waited too long. You really want to take advantage of the time you have in college to start networking, to actually start meeting people, get internships. I think one of the most valuable skills is networking. So actually, for example, do you have a LinkedIn account? Get on LinkedIn, start connecting. For example, if you're interested in Foxconn or you're interested in another company that you really would be interested in working in, then you should start networking with, for example, maybe people from alumni from your school, connect with them who are in the company, get an understanding of what it's like, maybe who are the people that you should meet, because a lot of these things we say it's about who you know. So getting those connections, meeting people, that will facilitate you getting those opportunities in the future. Because really, the best way to get the job is not by submitting, throwing a bunch of resumes, but rather getting those things through the connections that you've made through that vigorous networking.
这跟我们台湾的一般同学想法很不一样，就是我们一般想说一定要好的大学毕业或者是研究所毕业，甚至有好的证照，然后有了这些学经历之后，再把这些学经历的 resume 把它寄到各个公司去。可是其实 Jamie 的想法比较，我觉得实际，就是你一定要有 connection 是一个很重要的一环。就好像我们这个 YouTube 的一些来宾，那都是一些算是一些经历，能够找到一些很优秀的人才。所以我相信，如果学生们或者是毕业的学子们想要转换跑道的人们，如果下次有这样子的机会的话呢，可以听听看 Jamie 的一个意见。其实，在镜头里面虽然只有看到我们两个，只是我们外围的都有我们的同学，还有我的搭档老师也在这边。那好，首先 Christine， 第一个你要问 Jamie 什么问题呢
？Jamie， 我想请问你，你有什么建议是可以给正在学中文的外国朋友
？Okay. Yeah. So. The lady here who just asked a question, Christine, we both, I mean, she's a full-on Chinese teacher. I kind of do it on the side right now, but I think a big thing is, and this is something I even tell a lot of my Taiwanese students who are working on English, is that I think a lot of people really underestimate the effort that it takes to make consistent progress at learning a language. Is I think you really have to treat it like almost like a lifestyle. So what do I mean by that? As I mentioned earlier in the video, having some type of routine or plan, how are you going to learn vocab? What do you have a goal, something that you want to achieve? For me personally, ever since I started learning Chinese, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I've always desired to see, would it be possible to speak almost like a native speaker? I always thought that would be really cool. So that's always been kind of my Mount Everest that I'm slowly but surely getting closer. For Chinese though, I think the first thing that will determine your success is sitting down with a teacher and spending a lot of time on the tones. Especially if you come from a language that doesn't have tones, so for example, North America, Europe, as examples, spend a lot of time on the tones. Unfortunately, I think a big issue I've observed in a lot of, Huayu Zhongxin and even just working with local tutors is they'll kind of treat the tones like an afterthought. It's oh, okay, these are the 4 tones. You understand? Okay, let's move on and get right into it. A lot of people I think are too attracted. Oh, the Chinese characters are so sexy, and I want to learn that stuff. But really, what soon happens is they're I've been learning for a year and I still speak Chinese like crap. You know, my tones are all over the place. So I would say spend a lot of time on tones, get comfortable with them, and I think that'll really set you up for long-term success.
我有2个问题，
好贪心哦，没问题。
这第2个问题你可以不用回答。第一个问题是你当初学中文的契机是什么？
哦。
第二个问题是你是台湾女婿吗
？To answer the second question, yes, my wife is Taiwanese. The first question is, when I was growing up, my father was an entrepreneur. He had his own business, so most of his customers were in China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea. So, especially when I was young, he'd come back and he'd bring back little trinkets or little souvenirs, or even just maybe the coins or the money, and I would see the character, I'm like, oh, that's so cool, that's so different. Like, people write like this. To me, that was such a foreign concept. So when I had the opportunity in high school and college to really learn Chinese seriously, I dove out the opportunity.
Thank you.
好，这是新的资讯，原来我们的Jamie是台湾女性。
好眼光，
厉害。好，换我们的。
Hello， 我是 Chow。那我想问比较轻松一点的问题，就是你既然来台湾已经10年，要11年了，那想问一下你最喜欢的台湾食物跟最讨厌、最不喜欢的台湾食物。
Okay, both good. Yeah, regarding the Taiwanese food that I like, it's a little boring, but I really like 牛肉面. I know, like especially like a 红烧. Oh. I'm kind of boring because I can seriously eat the same food every day. This is like something my wife gives me crap about all the time. You know, you should try different things, but hey, when I find a food I like, I'll settle in. Regarding food I don't like, I'm also probably your typical foreigner. For example, 猪血糕, 臭豆腐, what was the other one? The other
皮蛋.
Yeah. So those 3, you know, those 3.
大肠面线.
And I think most Taiwanese will ask foreigners, oh, can you eat these 3? And like, to answer your question, I've tried all of them, so I've tried, but I've just decided I think we're better apart.
谢谢。
Okay, thank you. 好，最后因为下一星期是很特别的日 ，Do you know next week is a special day in Taiwan?
或者中秋节
So I have something for Jamie. Yes, this is for Jamie.
Oh wow!
Wow, this is yes.
Thank you. That's so nice of you. Thank you. 谢谢.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you, everyone. Guess I'll see everyone next time. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.